So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on today's webcast. My name is Ian Cotton. I'm an account manager in the commercial sector sales team. Joining me today is Michael Owen. He is Visual's business productivity team lead and is going to be talking to you today in more detail about OneDrive for Business. So before we start, I'd like to briefly run through a couple of points. If you do have any questions as we proceed through the webcast, please feel free to use the Q&A facility in Skype for Business. If you're dialed into the call, please email inquiries@visual.com and we'll do our best to answer all questions before we finish the webcast today. Phones will be muted to ensure we eliminate any background noise. However, we will take you all off mute at the end of the session so you're able to ask us questions related to today's presentation. And finally, just to make you aware, we are recording today's webcast, and in our follow-up email we will provide you all with a link so you're able to listen again or share amongst your colleagues who may not have been able to join us today. So before I hand over to Mike, I'd like to take a moment just to give you a very quick introduction into Visual, just in case you're not fully aware of who we are or what we do. So Visual are a pure play Microsoft Gold partner, and that makes us unique amongst the Microsoft partner community in that we only provide consulting and managed services in support of Microsoft products and solutions. We've got no interest in alternative third-party solutions, which means that you can be sure our only focus is to leverage maximum value from your investment in Microsoft technologies. We are a Tier 1 Microsoft platform partner, which means we cover everything with the exception of Dynamics AX, GP and NAV. We are a Tier 1 Smart Teaming partner, and last year alone we delivered in excess of £1 million worth of services on behalf of Microsoft directly. And we're also incredibly proud to be named Microsoft UK Country Partner of the Year for 2015 in what was only our 10th year of trading. So hopefully this demonstrates to you a little bit depth around our capabilities and why Microsoft view us in particular as a safe and trusted pair of hands. In terms of how our business is structured, we've got three distinct business divisions, which are business consultancy, technical consultancy, and managed services. Our business group will lift the conversation away from product and focus very much on how we can provide transformational change at scale and helping our customers to achieve their business objectives by using Microsoft technologies. This is where you'll find our strategic consultants, our engagement managers, our project managers, and our architects. Technical consulting is now split into 5 practice areas. That includes business productivity, covering areas such as SharePoint and obviously OneDrive for Business. UC and messaging would be the likes of Skype for Business, Exchange and Office 365. Cloud infrastructure or System Center, Direct Access and Active Directory. And finally, we also have consulting areas focus very much on CRM and application development. All of our consultants are specialists in their chosen fields. We don't employ any generalists, which is why we're viewed as a technical powerhouse in the marketplace today. Last and definitely not least are Visual's managed services, where our consultancy engagements help you to design, plan, build, test and deploy. Our managed services solutions, be it on-premise, cloud or hybrid, can provide proactive or reactive support to monitor, optimize and manage your investment in Microsoft solutions. In the case of OneDrive for Business, how are you going to ensure your line of business applications remain up and available when deploying new technologies? How do you address the potential skills gap internally when implementing new services and consuming evergreen Microsoft solutions? We're able to provide a range of services to address these needs, ensuring you're fully supported by our dedicated UK-based Microsoft accredited engineers. At Visual, we strongly believe that IT should be seen as an enabler for business transformation. We've got 3 customer-ready strategies designed to deliver business transformation against your business objectives, essentially putting high T at the heart of positive change. The first of these is our connected business strategy, which focuses on how you engage with your customers, ensuring you have the right information on the right device at the right time, allowing you, importantly, to make the right decision. Our end user computing strategy ensures that your workforce is empowered by considering the tools required as part of an individual's day-to-day role. For example, what do you need to consider to allow that individual to perform on a daily basis? Or would you need to consider smartphones, tablets, PCs, laptops? Can we reduce associated costs by implementing solutions such as Skype for Business, which would provide flexible mobile working solutions and communication and collaboration? So essentially it's mobilization of your workforce, but in a secure way. And finally, we have our optimized service vision, which is an enhancement of infrastructure, operations and process. We consider whether cloud, hybrid or on-prem is best for you and look to optimize your infrastructure accordingly. We look to find the most efficient delivery models for your business applications, and we can reference many customers who we've saved millions of pounds a year by moving them out of typical outsource agreements and delivering IT applications in the cloud, fully supported by Visual Managed Services. So that's it from me. I'm now going to pass you over to Mike, who will kick off for the main body of today's presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian. So, by way of an agenda, I just want to cover off what is OneDrive for Business. I want to then talk about some of the considerations you might have when looking to deploy OneDrive for Business in your organization, and also talk about some of the administrative controls that you need to consider. We'll then do a quick walkthrough from both a user perspective of some of the functionality that's available, but then also some of the reporting and controls that are available from the admin portal. And then also talk briefly about some of the features that are coming soon, because as OneDrive for Business hosted in Office 365 is an evergreen service, we're always getting new updates and the kind of the latest and greatest technology. So OneDrive for Business is effectively your personal file share. Many organizations have a P drive, say, a network file share. Maybe people use My Documents hosted on their laptops. But then if we've got those setups, we typically get a number of issues that crop up. So how can I find my files easily? If it's just a network file share and I'm using this on a day-to-day basis, how can I easily search for content? How can I share that content with people? Typically, people are going to attach a document from their P drive or from their local laptop hard disk to an email it to somebody else. Now I've got duplication of content. And a lot of what SharePoint provides is mechanisms, functionality around deduplication and creating the one source of information. And we go into that in a lot more detail in the EDRMS webinar that we did a few weeks back, which is available on YouTube if you would like to watch that. But from a user perspective, it's, well, how can I get access to those files? If I'm not sitting at my desktop, then I can't get to those personal files. So we've got a bit of a problem in this kind of mobile-ready world. And the one in the top left-hand corner is kind of what organizations almost see as the biggest risk, I guess. People end up creating their own silos of information. So I want to store a load of stuff on my desktop, unless it's prohibited by group policy, or I want to store it in my documents or on my local C drive. Now, what happens if that person loses that laptop, or it gets corrupted so they can't get the information back? From a personal perspective, obviously that's quite annoying, because unless we've got backups, all of that's got. From an organizational perspective, how can I search for all of that information if it's just stored on a local drive? I can't adhere to my governance policies. I can't respond, well, maybe I can't respond fully to maybe freedom of information requests, because this has become a silo of information that isn't accessible by anybody else. So by moving content into OneDrive for Business, we mitigate a lot of the risks and a lot of the issues that people see on a day-to-day basis with storing personal files in either personal network file shares or on their own devices. So some of the key features from an end user perspective is that we now have the ability to share documents from a central location. So I don't have duplication of content, and so I can still retain control of what is my information, my personal information maybe. But I can also collaborate with people. Whoever I share the information with from my OneDrive for Business site, they only get the permissions that I want them to see. So at the moment, I can grant people edit permissions to come and work on a document, or I can just grant them view permissions, in which case they only have a read-only view of the content. But using Office 365 and Office Online, we can also allow collaboration on the same file at the same time. So it speeds up that collaborative process. We also allow greater access to content. Obviously, this can be controlled through administrative settings. So do I actually want people to be able to use the OneDrive app on mobile phones, for example? Or do I just want people to be able to access content through their laptop or through the website? Now, if we are wanting to synchronize information onto a laptop because I work on the train, for example, and I may not have a good network connection, we can synchronize content from OneDrive for Business down onto my laptop so I can take it away with me. So at the moment, we can synchronize all of the files within my OneDrive for Business site. I can synchronize particular folders if I wanted to. Those files can be edited offline, and then as soon as the changes have been made, and as soon as I get an internet connection again, those files will be synchronized back to my OneDrive for Business site. This is all made possible through a small app which is installed on your device, which is also called the OneDrive for Business app, and you can then selectively choose to sync the whole of your OneDrive for Business site or particular folders. Because bear in mind, with a standard E3 license with Office 365, every user will get 1 terabyte of personal storage. So having to synchronize a terabyte down onto a laptop, well, maybe that's okay. Maybe most laptops have this big enough to synchronize that. But do we actually want that to happen? Do we want all of that content to be synchronized every time? I should point out that those quotas can change. We can reduce those, and I'll show you how to do that later. From a security and permissions perspective, every user who has a OneDrive for Business site is the owner of that area. For those of you familiar with SharePoint terminology, they're actually the site collection administrator of that site. That means they have overall admin control to everything in that area. Some of the capabilities are actually being hidden by Microsoft because they recognize that it's potentially a risk. But in theory, as a site collection administrator of my site, I could go and create subsites if I wanted to, and create different areas or new apps as I choose, because I control that area. I'm also in control of permissions. So if I want to share more than one document, or I want to share a whole folder with somebody or a group of people, then I can do that, and it's up to me. By default, everything in that OneDrive for Business site is only permissioned to me to have that owner access. Nobody else can have access to that. And no other standard user can have access to that. There are administrative functions I'll show you later which will allow e-discovery and search within those areas. We also have a recycle bin as part of OneDrive for Business, so that if I delete something, it's going to sit there for 90 days, and if I do want to get it back, then I can. And it doesn't end up being a support request to say, oh, I've deleted it, and can you restore this file, or can you restore my network file share back again? So from a sharing perspective, there's two methods of being able to share content with other people. On a document-by-document basis or on a folder-by-folder basis, I can say I want to share this information with an authenticated user. So I want to share specific content with someone, but I want them to log in. I need to know who it is that is either viewing that information, or by using the drop-down, I can say, well, they can edit this information as well. And the message that I type in the box gets included in a standard email that is sent to the person that I want to share these files or this folder with. The other option is the get a link option. Now, I can create a link that allows view-only access, or if I really wanted to, I could provide a link that would allow edit access. But the key difference here is that these are anonymous links. So normally, you would only really use it as a view link. I mean, I've seen this used in the scenario of maybe a newsletter where it's being sent out to vendors, perhaps, and there's a specific piece of information, maybe it's marketing collateral, and I want people to access it, but I don't want them to edit it. And so I can include this link as part of my newsletter, safe in the knowledge that no one's going to be able to edit it, but everyone can still come and view that content if they want to. We can also set expiration dates on. Someone's having issues viewing the presentation. Is anyone else having this problem? You could just use the Skype window to let us know. So with the links, we can also then set expiration dates on that content. So maybe in my example, not so great, but in say a tender situation where I have a number of documents that I want to send out and only use it for information about my organization, then I could set an expiration date so that those documents expire at the date that we expect tender responses to come back in. That way, all of my organizational information isn't out there with vendors that I'm not going to work with in the end. So once I've shared this document or folder with other people, I can then actually stop sharing. I can choose to say, well, I don't want these people to have access to my content anymore. And we can do it sort of as a sort of stop sharing completely. So remove all of the guest links, remove all of the individual links that I've delegated access out onto to individuals, or we can just remove individuals' permissions. So with my colleague here, Patrick, I can actually say, well, actually, I need to change your permissions. I can change that to be edit permissions on the fly, so that he can now work on this document. And I'll show you these features in the demo in a moment, because with the latest version of Office, the client tools, we can also do this from within the client. So share documents with people, we can edit the permissions with people from within the client and not have to come back to OneDrive for Business in order to do that. So when I'm sharing a document with somebody, we can collaborate on this in real time now. So in this example, we've got my colleague Abby, who's sharing a document with Joshua. And Abby can see that Joshua is editing this document at the same time. With OneDrive, with the Office Online tools, you'll actually see a little flag of where someone else is editing that document. So this is where some of the document management features that are activated by default within OneDrive for Business come into their own. So we always get major versions created, and the versions are created every time we initiate an editing session. So in the online scenario, Office Online will automatically save documents for you. You don't have to click save, it just happens. Where we've got multiple people working on a document at the same time, just using the online version of Word or Excel, this then automatically saves and creates a new version every 30 minutes. So you don't need to create multiple versions. It's done automatically for you. But with version control that we've got within OneDrive for Business, we can actually say, well, I want to revert back to a previous version. I want to restore version 1 because the edits made in version 2 aren't appropriate, or I want to delete all of my previous versions and just leave the most recent version available. So what sort of things should we consider when we're looking to move content into a OneDrive for Business? So by default, OneDrive for Business has been created so it can share with multiple people. This could be anyone within your organization, but also we could be sharing content with external users as well. So anyone that has an Office 365 user ID, we can share that content with them, or anyone who has a Microsoft account, so at outlook.com, at live.co.uk, something like that. As an administrator, we can actually restrict that, and we can restrict how we share as well. So we might want to share, but just with authenticated users. We might not want to use guest links. So we have the options of reducing the options available to the end user. Now, what sort of content should be stored in OneDrive for Business? Well, Microsoft have lifted a lot of the restrictions that we used to have. So SharePoint on-premise has a list of restricted file types that we can't add or can't upload into SharePoint on-premise. With OneDrive for Business, just about any file type now is available for upload. They recently amended this capability. Do we also want users to be able to access OneDrive for Business from, say, personal mobiles? Do we actually want our organizational information on maybe personal laptops at home? Because with Office 365, you obviously get the huge flexibility of being able to work from anywhere using any device if you so wish. But we might not want that. We might have quite confidential information. And although we can restrict it to using products like Azure Rights Management, that person can still authenticate and access content from home if they wanted to. So there are controls to be able to say, well, I only want to access this from authorized devices. So the mobile device management features of Office 365 can help govern that side of things. So from a storage perspective, I mentioned that you get a terabyte of storage, currently get a terabyte of storage for every user who has a OneDrive for Business site. Now, that does not come out of your pool of storage for Office 365. So this is in addition to it. But do we actually want a terabyte of storage? If our devices that we're issuing to people have only got, say, 120 gig SSDs, then they're quickly going to fill that up if they've got an awful lot of content. So we can alter the quotas and reduce that down if we wanted to prevent large amounts of storage being saved to OneDrive for Business. And lastly, what's our migration strategy? We might have gigabytes, terabytes of personal data that is stored in network file shares or our laptops. How do I actually get it into OneDrive for Business? So typically there are two main routes to migrate content into OneDrive for Business. So this is either the kind of the manual approach, where we say to our users, you really need to tidy up your areas. You know, we're going to be closing off your network drives, so we're going to start locking them down. Start manually moving information into OneDrive for Business. And when you've got the sync tool, that can be as simple as a copy-paste from one location to another, just using Windows Explorer. The kind of intermediate option is that Microsoft's onboarding team will actually accept encrypted hard drives with all of that user information on. So they will do the upload process for you. There is also an onboarding website that you can use. So if you go to success.office.com, or I think also Roadmap, sorry, not Roadmap. I've got it later in the slides, I'll come back to it. But there is a website which you can also sort of drag and drop content onto it, and it will upload it for you. The higher cost approach, but maybe more sort of autonomous approach, is the use of third-party tools to do this. So I want to point to all of my source locations, create maybe batches of personal network file shares that I want to upload, and do it on a scheduled basis, maybe overnight, over a weekend, something like that. So all of the main vendors out there, the Metalogics, the AvePoints, the ShareGates, sort of in the partner community, have tools that will do this migration for you. Okay, so from an admin perspective, I'll talk through some of the options that we've got. Some of these things are kind of new. Some of the bits are just released. So where it's just released, I'll sort of call it out, because unless you're on the fast ring of updates, you're getting those first release updates, you may not see it just yet. So there are user reporting control sort of reports within Office 365. If you go to the portal and you go to reports, you can then start to see, well, how many OneDrive for Business sites have actually been used. Although the storage space is there in the background, until the user clicks on the OneDrive for Business option, their site isn't actually deployed. And it's because of this automatic deployment mechanism that users get assigned that site collection administration rights, those kind of overall user rights. We can also look at exactly how much storage is being used. This report is slightly sort of wrongly badged, so although it says team site storage, we can actually target this down. Just show me OneDrive for Business areas and show me how much is being used. The other report that which I don't have a screenshot of is we can also report on files. So what sort of files are people storing? What are the kind of the largest size files that people are storing? With the latest update to OneDrive for Business, we can upload huge amounts. I mean, we used to be restricted to 2 gig in SharePoint on-premise, and now we've got 10 gig. So huge amounts can be stored in these areas if we really wanted to. So from limiting the quotas, yes, we get a terabyte of storage. Do we actually need it? Well, unfortunately, at the moment, this is down to PowerShell commands. So once you connect to your Office 365 environment, you can then sort of use the set SPO tenant command to actually quota all OneDrives down to a smaller limit if you wanted to. Now, the thing to note here is that you need to set this from day one, because if we've got 100 users who've already got OneDrive and then you assign this, only new sites that get created will get the new limit. So if we need to retrospectively apply it, so I can go and do it on a site, well, it's a site collection, by site collection basis, to say, reset this OneDrive for Business site to my new storage quota that I've set. I ought to point out that setting the storage quota to 0 will have no effect. Also, setting it greater than a terabyte will have no effect either. But there are things coming if you have users that are wanting to store more than a terabyte. From an external sharing perspective, so I can configure OneDrive for Business sites to not share with anyone outside of my organization. Okay, Adrian, I'll come back to that question in a moment. We can say I want to restrict sharing completely, or I only want to allow sharing to recognize users that are in my organization directory. Or we can say, well, allow external users, but they have to be authenticated. We don't want to use anonymous guest links. So if I am going to allow my users to share content externally, I might want to be able to say, well, how am I going to restrict that? So I can say, allow sharing only with these certain domains, or restrict sharing to certain domains if I really wanted to. So I don't want to share information with direct competitors, for example. All of this can actually also be done through PowerShell if that's your weapon of choice. So the things like the sharing domain restriction mode, which will set all of the controls in the right-hand screenshot there, or we've got the sharing allowed domain list, or sharing blocked domain list, which will also sort of allow you to provide the domains that you do or do not want to share access with. So from a restricting access side of things, this is where we can use mobile device management if we want to prevent access to mobile devices. But more recently, Microsoft have released a new PowerShell command that will restrict which devices I will actually want to allow my synchronization to happen with. Because the OneDrive for Business sync application exists on the Apple Mac store. So if you have a MacBook as an organizational device, you could install that and have your OneDrive for Business files synchronized. But if you're at home and you have a home device, we might want to say, well, actually, these are the list of known devices we have in our organization. So I only want to allow that sync app to synchronize content to authorized devices, rather than allowing business information onto personal laptops at home. So from a security and compliance perspective, these are some of the things that are kind of it's a really big push for Microsoft, needless to say. I mean, we've got a lot of new features coming in the whole security and compliance space. But this is more from a kind of reporting perspective. So I want to report on things that certain users have done. So show me, in this case, show me things that I have done in my environment. So where I've modified something or where I've accessed certain files. It would also show you where you've shared certain files or who you've shared them with. So we might have a search, which I'll show you in a moment, where we can search for everyone that's had access maybe to a particular file in case we need to track down how a file's got leaked, for example. We also have these sort of content search and e-discovery capabilities. So permissions to the security and compliance portal that Microsoft have created can be delegated to certain users. So you might have the people responsible for freedom of information requests. You might have your senior information risk officer sort of assigned to this. But I can create a query that says, go and find me every document with the keyword governance and the file type of PDF in this example. And I've just targeted my particular OneDrive. So it'll tell me, right, okay, I've found 10 items that have an instance of governance and are a PDF. We can also use the compliance side of things to enforce retention policies, more in fact deletion policies on this. So if we've got content sitting there that's been sat there for more than 2 years, 3 years, we could start deleting that to help the user sort of stay on top of the amount of information that's sitting in their OneDrive for Business site. And this can be done on sort of whether it's last modified or based on a creation date. These are configurable policies. They work in very much the same way as the information management policies that you get with SharePoint. We can also apply data loss prevention rules. So the DLP is that I want to prevent the leaking of, say, personally identifiable information. So if I have a spreadsheet with 10 items of personally identifiable information, maybe it's national insurance numbers, I will allow that information to be sent externally. If I have the same spreadsheet but it's got 500 items of personally identifiable information, I want to outright block that. I do not want that volume of information going outside of my organization. There's a lot of rules that have already been configured, and you can also then go and configure your own rules to fit your business requirements. So finally, from the admin control side of things, the most common request almost is that, well, I've already got my documents, people are used to using my documents, but I want to start redirecting those known folders, those my documents areas, into using OneDrive for Business. So I mitigate that risk of having content just stored on a laptop, for example. So we can do this by creating a group policy that makes sure all users sync to exactly the same folder. We can standardize that. We can then add additional group policies to make sure that my documents folder are now sort of remapped to an appropriate OneDrive for Business location, so that we can drive that consistency. And there is actually a support article sort of on support.office.com that explains how to do this if it's of use to you. Okay, so I'll quickly whiz through some of the end user sort of functionality, and I'll show you some of the admin functionality as well. So this is my OneDrive for Business site. Everything we do at Visual is all hosted in Office 365. So we have this app launcher at the top, and I can get to OneDrive for Business off the app launcher if I wanted to. For those of you thinking of deploying SharePoint 2016, you will also see the app launcher appear on your on-premise installations. So here I have all of my files that I use on a day-to-day basis. You can see on the right-hand side where we've got sharing that the majority of these are only shared, are not shared. They're secured to me. Originally, when Microsoft deployed OneDrive for Business, they deployed this Share with Everyone folder, which by default had open permissions. they've now stopped that. We can optionally put that in if we wanted to, but it's not there automatically. So anything that is put into this location is now automatically shared with everybody in the organization. Therefore, it's searchable. I also have a search bar at the top here, and as soon as I start to type a keyword, it'll start telling me things about governance and show me the documents that I've got to do with governance. I can then click to open those documents if I wanted to. I can look at recently edited documents that I've worked on or that I've been involved in the creation of. This is starting to bring together some of the delve functionality, if you're aware of that, where search fits the use case of I have some information I want to find out more about. Delve takes it from the other perspective. I know what you've already been working on because it's all stored in SharePoint or you're working in Office 365. So I'll try and anticipate what you want to find. So it's kind of the reverse of search almost. I've then got a list of things that other people in the organization have shared with me so that I can go and work on those if I wanted to. The discover side of things, again, is content that has been popular. It's suggestions of content that I may find useful because of what I'm working on. And then finally, we've got the recycle bin. So things that I've deleted that are no longer in use to me. So if I have this particular file and I want to share this with somebody, I need someone to work on this with me. So I'm going to ask my colleague Molly here to edit this and say, so hi, and I can send this link out, send this email out. The permissions are automatically set as soon as I say share. I'm requiring sign-in. I'm requiring the sending of an invite. So I'll go ahead, share that with Molly. And whilst that's happening, I could also say, get me a link. Now, if you have rights management turned on within your environment, you can you'll start to see different options here. So I want to have a view link, but you must have a visual account, or I want a view link and I'm not going to allow sign-in to be required, or we can send the edit links in the same way. We also have the option to see who is sharing this document at the moment and stop the sharing if I wanted to. So if I click on this document and I'm still in Edge as my browser, using the Word Online tools that are part of Office 365, and I say I want to edit in the browser. So what we've got here is, I can see that Molly's also editing this document, and I've now got a flag here that shows me where Molly is editing this document. So as I'm sort of working, I'm able to see the content that she's editing, and I can also make my own changes at the same time, so that we're both still working on this document at the same time. Now, what we've got at the top here, you can see it says saved. So whenever we start making changes to this, Office Online is automatically picking up those changes for me and saving it in the background. Now, if I want to actually move into Word as the client tool, because obviously being web-based, all of the online products have some limited editing capabilities, and it's much better than it ever used to be, but I might want to do a little bit more with it. So now I'm in Word 2016, and I can still see that Molly is in this document. I can also see maybe that some updates are available because I'm now not getting that automated save option that we get in the online product. But I can also look at the sharing with the sharing options to see, right, well, I can see that Molly's editing this at the moment. Maybe I want to invite somebody else to come and work on this document. So I could send an invite out to Ian as well, and have and be able to invite people direct from within Word. So once I'm done editing with this document, what we get, it's a little bit hidden, but we get an information pane that we can select for each of the documents, each of the folders or files, and that will start to show the recent activity that's gone on within this document, so that you can see what's actually been happening with it. And at a point where I'm happy with Molly's contribution, and say, well, actually, thank you very much, but I'm going to stop sharing now. So that's going to disable any guest links. It's going to remove permissions that I've delegated out. So I'm just reset back as the original owner. I can also see some information about the document here as well. From a versioning perspective, if I go to version history, I can start to see any versions that have been built up and when they were last created. So if I want to restore a previous version, I can do that direct within the browser. And okay, so because it's still open somewhere, maybe Molly was still trying to edit it, this is going to prevent me from overwriting that version. But we do have control over the capabilities, the versions that we've got. So from an admin perspective, quickly, I'm going to flick over to a personal tenant. So this is the new security and compliance portal that you'll start to see more and more features being built into it. So from here, I can look at some of the reports available, or I could start an investigation to say, well, I need to find some information about things within my environment. This doesn't just have to be OneDrive for Business. We can delegate permissions to this area, like I said, to those elevated roles where I want to be able to search everything, to be able to say, well, tell me everything about governance documents within my environment. At the moment, I've got it restricted just to my particular site. I could say all sites. I could change my query here to say, well, actually delete this condition. I want to know about all documents that contain the word governance. So now this will go away and refresh my search results. So whereas I had 10 results before, this will now pick up the fact that I've got more results because it's not just PDF files that I'm using anymore. And this information can then also form the basis maybe of an e-discovery case. So I want to be able to search for all instances of documents, of content that matches certain criteria, but now I want to apply a legal hold to it. So users can still use their content, they can still edit it, but e-discovery allows me to take a snapshot of all of that content and store it so I can export it off to whoever has requested it. I can also start to apply some of the data loss prevention rules. So maybe I've got a rule to do with confidential content. So although there are plenty of rules that Microsoft have pre-created, they may not apply to all your scenarios. So I'm targeting all my OneDrive for Business sites. I'm looking for a metadata field, in this case called business impact, and just where it's confidential. This example I need to point out was actually sort of done for an EDRMS solution. So one of the drawbacks of OneDrive for Business is that we can't actually apply metadata to the content. We can't create content types at the moment and apply that to content. So I would be looking more for information maybe that I recognize. Maybe I've got customer ID numbers that are in a set format, or maybe in national insurance numbers. And if our policy says we shouldn't be storing that information in OneDrive for Business, well, I can use a DLP policies to monitor this. And when that content gets sent, we can either say, well, I want to just test it at the moment. Have I got the right criteria set? So test it out. Let me know how many times this policy conditions are met before I actually turn it on and start enforcing it. So I can enforce it through policy tips. I can enforce it through blocking the content completely, or I could also say that I want to. Sorry, the third option just completely gone from my brain. So when it comes back, I'll tell you about that one. So we can also say from a retention side of things that I want to apply a blanket policy to all of my SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business sites. So this is the retention side of things. I want to automatically start deleting content after a certain amount of time. Okay. So from a what's coming soon perspective, at the moment we've got a bit of a free-for-all on what on the types of content that can be uploaded. Soon we'll be able to, as administrators, be able to restrict that content. So I don't want people storing their iTunes library, for example, in OneDrive for Business. It may have the storage capacity, but it's not business content. Why would we allow that? I think it was Adrian that asked around sizing of OneDrive for Business. Well, with the premium subscriptions, so by that I mean E3, E4, E5, the G3, 4, and 5 subscriptions. If you just subscribe to OneDrive for Business, the Plan 2 and the SharePoint Plan 2, they're also included in this. And I believe education is as well. But we can now start to allow unlimited storage for those users. So this is where that quota really will start to sort of come into effect. We'll also start to see the functionality to be able to move and copy content between other SharePoint libraries. So I might want to move content into a team site. I might want to draft it initially in my OneDrive for Business site, but then move things into the into my official team site or copy it over. So that functionality is actually coming to team sites as well. So Microsoft have recognized the fact that it's a bit cumbersome to actually do a download and upload, or maybe using send-to connections in order to move content around in the environment. They're also improving the file name support, so including percentages, including hashtags, things like that, as part of file names. And the synchronizing of shared folders. So I said we can share a folder, but if a colleague has shared a folder to do with a particular event, I'm not able to take that offline. That still it belongs to the colleague that shared it, so that I can't actually see anything, or I can't actually see that offline anymore. There's going to be improvements to the reporting features, this file usage and activity that I described when I was talking through the reporting capabilities. And it's the Fast Track migration service that I was referring to earlier, so fasttrack.microsoft.com. At the moment, they support migrations from file shares, from Google Drive, from Box. They're now going to start supporting Dropbox migrations as well. And they'll do that with organizations who have 150 plus seats in their tenant. So it's a very sort of cheap, quick way of being able to get information into your OneDrive for Business sites. For more information on what's coming soon, if you go to fasttrack.microsoft.com and then click on the roadmap link, or just go to /roadmap, you'll see a list of all the features that are rolling out, the features that are in development, the ones that are coming soon. So you're able to sort of get ahead of your users in terms of functionality. You can actually assign groups of users to be given the first released features. So typically your IT administrators maybe want to be aware of what's coming down the track. So using the roadmap and the ability to see first release features is something that I would definitely advise keeping an eye on. So in summary then, OneDrive for Business is going to be able to save you a lot of costs from internal storage costs. You get a huge amount of file storage with OneDrive for Business. It also mitigates some of that risk of just having files stored purely on laptops without having a backup solution that you have to apply to all of your devices. We've also then got the flexibility of working remotely, working potentially anywhere and accessing my personal files, regardless of whether it's a work device or a personal device. And then there are also sort of proven approaches to deliver OneDrive for Business in a relatively short timescale. Ridge will deliver a OneDrive for Business engagement, which typically the design and plan side of things, including all the documentation and workshops, is only around 5 days. And we talk through all of the options, all of the considerations. And a lot of the considerations, to be honest, are more the communication and planning side of things rather than the administration side. It's also fully integrated with Windows 10 in terms of search, and also with Office 2016 in terms of the search and security measures that you see. So that's it from me. We're going to open up for any further questions. So if you have any further questions, please let us know. Put them into the Skype for Business message window, or we will unmute phones if you've got questions. So this recording, this webinar has been recorded, so if you do need to drop off, you will get a link to it. It'll be published out to YouTube in the coming days. So thank you very much for your attendance, and we'll hang around for a little while longer to take any further questions.
This is just the support element of it. We've got about 25 grand to buy the new kit, and then another 12 grand to support it.
Don't be shy, guys. We are going to keep the session open for just a few more minutes. So if you do have any questions, please obviously speak up or drop us an IM, or you can email inquiries@ridgeall.com, and we will come back to you as soon as we're able. Last chance. We'll give you just a couple more minutes, but if there are no more questions, then I think we'll end the webcast. So thank you all very much for attending. Details will be sent out to you in a link later on today, and feel free to circulate amongst friends, colleagues, and so on.
Sorry, one more thing, Ian. Separately, I've just been asked around UK data centers for Microsoft. So there are plans for a data center on the outskirts of London and also in South Wales to go into preview later this year. So Microsoft will be sort of working with certain customers to sort of make sure, test those data centers out, make sure it's all up and running okay. This is normally a kind of data sovereignty issue. So data that currently for UK organisations it's going to be stored in Dublin or Amsterdam for resilience. But because they're within the EU, the majority of the compliance and regulations are going to be the same. Where we've got stricter compliance, maybe for financial or legal sort of reasons, then yes, we would have to wait until end of this year to sort of start sort of creating those tenancies. However, previously Microsoft have moved customers' tenants from one data center to another as it became available. So if people were thinking about using Office 365 or OneDrive for Business in particular, and they were to start today, if they wanted to move to the London data center when it came online, that would be an option, and Microsoft would facilitate that transition. Okay, are there any more questions?
I think that's it, Mike.
Okay. Thank you all very much for your attendance then.
Thank you, everyone.